As our blue Terran, hailing from France for Team Liquid, it is Clem.
Top left of Equilibrium, we do have the red Terran Spirits, who is on Scythe Storm, I believe. Just isn't, he's not wearing his thingy. That's okay. That's all right.
Kind of a fun battleground for the first map, by the way. Like you mentioned how it's a U shape, but it's also really big, like really big. And TET, I think about the number of things that I would find annoying to play here. Like there's a kind of funny gold base that might not come into play early on, but taking an expansion, then it's like so far to get across to deal with it with my medevac or Raven and such. Like there's a lot of annoying things about this. Like doesn't come across normal to me of how to approach it, and already we see small deviations in their openings. Clem with the far more safe approach with the double gas, and Spirit just going for that one Rax expand without a scout by the looks of it.
A little bit of a risk. If you're going to take a risk, why not go the full way? Full Monty, 100% of the risk, so no scout as well. Kind of some argument there. Clem is not prone to 2-raxing, I suppose, which would be your biggest threat, but nonetheless, Clem has been incredibly potent in this matchup, more astoundingly than others, I suppose. We already knew that he'd be very potent in TVZ. I was gonna say in StarCraft 2. Yeah, really getting back into it. In TVZ, just drop a couple of Marines, kill the guy instantly. But TVT, initially a struggle matchup, and then kind of like he's climbing this big old hill, now has reached, it feels like, over the peak to the promised land of being able to actually clean kill all of his opponents within the first 5 minutes. And again, not because of a 2-rax that he proxies to really get cheesy, but because his control is so excellent over whatever opener he does decide to do, oftentimes with, of course, the multiple Reapers and Hellions.
Yeah, like for Clem, I think a big thing for him was just confidence in like taking on Korean Terrans in general, right? And I think Gamers 8 was a real turning point for him just mentally, like being able to go up against Maru, which was absolutely his scariest opponent, and beat him on the big stage for all the oodles of cash that he ended up taking home. It was massive for him. He also now has Cure as a teammate, one of the most solid standard Terrans that we have on the scene right now to kind of learn from and maybe get some replays from. I know he's been sharing them with some of the teams, so that's been awesome. But yeah, this is absolutely going to be a tricky one for Spirit, but so far his build will line him up with a small edge to get things going, because his CC is quite a lot faster in Zombie Grub. That's a Spirit thing right there. The third CC before a starport is even on the way here for him.
Or Clem's natural is done, to really just hit that home. That's pretty freaking fast, but again, Spirit has decided to go full 100% when it comes to greed. Still no scouts, and apparently no intention to, purely defensive right now. I know you brought up Cure, and I just wanted to double down on like not only a very solid TVTer to have always studied, but then also arguably maybe the best, considering that Maru has had a temporary fall from grace, I suppose. And it just as recently, I suppose, been having a little bit of struggle, like for instance against Clem. But Cure not only seems to be perhaps taking that mantle, but then also is really making use of the new patch. So he had that kind of not mass cyclone, but like a 6 cyclone build that he's been trying out. And so I like that that's part of the team now for Clem. He can actually look at that, and he's also the one that's been trying a lot with the new patch, and then maybe do something with it. Not this game, but in a best of 5, you might actually see that pushed out. It was amazingly effective in the GSL, a little less so elsewhere, but it is a Banshee opener, actually, which, I mean, has kind of made a return to like experimentation in this matchup with the new patch, but it also was kind of becoming a bit of a thing for the one surprise Banshee as well before the patch came into effect.
Yeah, this, like, obviously the Cyclone's a lot worse now at dealing with anti-air units. Spirit was very quick to pull and pretty decently quick to react here. Like, he might actually get the kill. Wow. I mean, so far for Spirit, all is greed, and despite being as blind as he's been, because we look at his base and what he's actually seen here, little. Like a very, very claustrophobic map for him, and to get things going like that and eking out a little bit of a supply lead and getting away with it all, or when I say supply lead, an eco lead. Yeah, even went for his 3 Raxes before the starport as well here, Zombie Grub. So yeah, massive shortcut cutting.
Yes, He's going to get to a lot of Marines with stim and combat shields before Clem even really does, it looks like, a more typical push out, you know, like tanks and Ravens, which that high technology push can take advantage of someone who is a budding Marine player. You know, they have a low Marine count, they don't have their upgrades done, they can't threaten you with a backstab and mobility, but because Spirit has just jump-started this game and this series in such a way, I mean, if Clem were to be like, oh, I could do something, I can kind of move out and get some position, he'd be dead wrong. I mean, he would just not be able to do very much without, again, that threat of the backstab, or even just a good concave coming in from multiple directions, because Spirit has gotten to his bio focus with medevac so freaking fast. I mean, Clem also does not really know a lot of what his opponent is doing. That Banshee got basically 0 scouting, so it's a weirdly blind as far as build orders go, TVT, but they're finally starting to take some map control.
Yeah, it's a little deceiving. Like 93 supply apiece here. The thing is, stim already done for Spirit, and that means your combat shield is so much faster as well. He has totally skirted by getting Ravens, and he's going for a double drop here. But that 1-1 being as close to finishing here, like he is very ahead unless something goes totally awry. All those Ravens work absolute supreme magic in the tank battles.
Interesting scan from Spirit. He scans the gold base. Not often taken, I suppose, in TVT. We've certainly seen some experimentation in the other matchups, but also ensuring nothing was, I guess, scouting him. He fully unloads. Not really going to find much, though. I mean, it'll be kind of a surprise, but he is surrounded by Clem's scouts, and Clem is taking a defensive position around his third base. He knows he doesn't know a whole lot about what's going on, so defense does actually work brilliantly for him, especially if he's going to be tracking down a bunch of medevac drops very shortly. Yeah.
I mean, you were totally right. That scan was definitely Mr. Careful, maybe being too careful, because, I mean, like, you could have just dropped there. I don't think anything would have been too bad for you, unless you ran over a very random Marine squad at that point, but I don't think it would have happened. Clem is going to catch up on the upgrades now. The armory was a little bit late for Spirit, but realizing that is one super advantage here, does try and start up that +2 immediately. That Raven count definitely will come into play this game. Like, unless Clem does something crazy and loses them, like I know I can, where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to drop turrets and do absolutely nothing, but they absolutely can play a massive part. So forgoing those for Spirit, that is definitely an interesting choice.
Raven, definitely still very useful, but we have seen some more experimentation with skipping them, or at least skipping the interference matrix upgrade, which I know Clem was actually initially doing, kind of. But just focusing primarily on the getting to the Marine part, getting to the mobility, I really thought was actually going to hold a little bit more threat to Clem, who again didn't really know exactly what was going on. But Spirit has played that jump forward. He skipped right over a lot of the typical parts of TVT into this Marine tank phase without really using a lot of the mobility that I thought he was going to. And as the game has gone on, as you said, like, upgrades have been kind of cut up on. At the very least, they're going to be completely even now in combat shields and 1-1 for the next minute and some change. I mean, Clem is totally fine defensively. I guess what I'm saying is it felt like Spirit was supposed to get something somewhere, but I'm looking at the total state of the game, and it is the upgrades, which are obviously important. 2-2 being so substantially far ahead. But it's a game where we are very familiar with the defending Terran lasting forever and then equalizing on upgrades at minute 15 or whatever it is. So it just feels like this is going to be set up like that.
Yeah, really weird when you think about it. It felt like he should be far more ahead, and like, what did he really gain? Like, upgrade lead is great, but eventually your opponent will catch up with you. It feels like Clem invested a lot of gas in other things, like his tank count, twice the number. Viking count, way higher as well. Granted, the medevac count's lower, but when he hasn't really needed to move out at all, why go for it? And Clem just getting his fourth base up faster than Spirit as well, so playing a little bit of leapfrog there and just playing the safe defensive game. Feels like he's taking a page out of Maru's book here.
He definitely has gone through a lot of practice of the super late game. I mean, it's been astounding watching Clem get sub 5-minute wins like back to back to back to back. That has been very impressive, very cutthroat of him. But then there was a time where he was also really, I think, doing a lot of practice on a more perhaps Maru style, being able to make this kind of comeback happen and being a lot more patient, as he definitely for a time there was kind of the embodiment of a young Terran, kind of a little too gung-ho to do stuff, right? But he's really matured, I suppose is the best best way for it. And so he can play out the game like this. And if his goal is to just extend it, then getting first to the air superiority would be a fantastic way to do it. That's exactly what he's doing. Already got the Vikings, more starports on the way. Spirit doubling down initially on his barracks production, did actually just add on those 2 starports as well. And I guess he is, you know, still fairly rich, so he can kind of pick and choose. But yeah, we're definitely heading towards late game TDT.
Yeah, I got a little bit worried when I saw like the 8 barracks going up, and I was like, oh my god, is he just going to go beyond it? You know, like just absolutely just sticking on that. But no, he's actually been very good. I love the armory as well. Going to try and get a bit of a leapfrog on the upgrades, but you see fusion cores coming out for both of them, extra CCs. Like if there's a late game TVT player or rather a late game Terran, it absolutely is Spirit, but Clem is no slouch in that regard. The upgrade lead is slightly in Spirit's favor for this fight, and you can see that really coming online here. This is the kind of fight that Spirit was really looking for.
Coming in from the north side as well. Those tanks are on siege and now totally unprotected. No Marines to save them. The Ravens hardly helpful, and the tanks don't know where to shoot. Clem moves out for the first time in this TVT and immediately gets slaughtered.
That was absolutely what Spirit was looking for, wasn't it? Like, the first fight with the Marines, he absolutely had the numbers to contest, and then just catching Clem with his pants down. It's all well and good having 3 sensor towers covering all your bases, but if you don't see that army coming, well. And now Spirit, he's also got 3-3 on the way, plus 2 on the tanks on the way as well. He's cooking.
Clem has one more chance to perhaps bring this game back to even, but Spirit so close to his production, opening up a pathway to his main base as well, potentially. It does seem like Clem is on the ropes and too bad of a way to recover, but he does have those extra bases. He does still have the air superiority, and he has some tanks, I suppose. It wasn't all of them that were sacrificed, but now he has so much time that he has to buy to actually recover. It's going to be incredibly difficult for him. Spirit eventually getting exactly what he was looking for, and now closing in on 3-3 upgrades. So he'll once again have a powerful opportunity to attack and perhaps actually end the game.
Truly taking a page out of Maro's book, you know? Get yourself behind and then try and work yourself out of a terrible situation. I mean, Spirit, he will have to add complexity to this army of his, because he does not have control of the skies, not one bit. It's all well and good having bigger numbers on the ground, but Clem is still mining from 3 bases, and Spirit has a huge bank to utilize here. But you can definitely see that there is a way out. Oh, is there? Spirit moving in, utilizing that massive upgrade lead that he has. And that is so many SCVs on that natural. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, lots are going to go down here. Vikings forced to land to help out as well, which they will. These Marines not healed up, not really all protected by tanks, but that is going to be it. Clem just still ultimately lost out on too many tanks to really have that dynamic duo of air control and tank coverage. And while he was getting a chance to build up to it, he had gotten up to 7. He had 2 at least, if not the third one, also on siege in the natural. That might have been another stopgap, I suppose, in Spirit's way to victory. It would not have been a comeback for Clem, but it would have still been the game watching. No, he didn't have those tank siege, and Spirit does strike at the perfect time to get victory, and not what I was expecting at all, actually, from start to finish, from both players. A Spirit game that goes 12, 13 minutes, okay, fine, whatever. But, like, overall, everything else, not so much. Not what I was expecting.
And I have to show this army graph. Like, Clem actually had way more, but lost tremendously more as well. Like, that was absolutely not meant to happen. While I readjust this, and I'm probably blurry for a minute. Okay, there we go. No, I mean, like, the fact that game went on for as long as it did, and Spirit didn't really gain that much, but the one thing he did have was the upgrades. That was the absolute perfect thing for have happen for him. Like, right as his 2-2 finishes, right before Clem's is done, takes out all the Marines, then he catches all those tanks off guard with no fodder in front of them. And Clem, yeah, his army was way more stacked with in regards to, like, just gas put into it. But man, you can't take a fight like that. You absolutely can't. Spirit with a very surprise game 1 win, I think.
Yeah, I guess it was pretty clear the way that it was set up was that Clem just expected that to be a tussle. And then the rest of the army coming in from the north was the big surprise, because he clearly had time to look at his army and see just tanks. He just did not think the army was ready to go, I guess. And pretty big blunder. The rest of the game, he was preparing a comeback, you know, having to catch up on those upgrades and actually get his superior technology army into a position is quite a struggle at that point. But then to not scout ahead, basically, you know, have 3 sensor towers and all your Marines everywhere except at that one moment in the right place to see the incoming Northern Army. Bad luck, I suppose, sure, but then also just a big mistake, and Spirit will be thankful for, and we'll be hoping that sets him up well in the best of 5, gaining momentum from the start to take down someone that he really is not favored against. Let's see if he can do it. We do have game for 2 on Oceanborn. I will find Bamlofs. There we go. In the top left, we do have Team Liquid's Clem.
And spawning on the bottom right-hand side, this Team Psystorm Gaming, it is Spirit.
He was on Control 1 this time. So far down. The observing.
Yes. I do that thing where I open up the little box and I'm like, aha, there you are, Bio. Found you. All right. This game, like, we have to remember how that one started off. Like, Spirit went for the most ultimately greedy build you can do, right? Absolutely, like, 1 rack CC without a scout, and then into a 3rd CC before your starport, and then also 2nd and 3rd barracks before the starport. Like, that was next levels of greed, and it still didn't feel like it got him that far ahead in the game. Like, you could absolutely see that Clem was still in it. But this game, double gas opening from both sides, and Clem, again, doing the nice SCV scout just to check what's going on here.
That's one of the things that you try and get away with, right? Similar to doing a 2 racks, actually, but it's the opposite. It's the macro cheese, I suppose, which is that you kind of roll the dice to a certain extent, because, you know, otherwise it's not even like the last map, or on Oceanborn rather, the last map had a natural ramp, right? So it's didn't have that kind of shout out defensive properties that like an orbital station back in the day would have, where you have that like easy 3 or 4 base setup that Spirit was trying to take advantage of. I think it is definitely possible that Clem could have gone for more aggressive opener and Spirit could have had a little bit more trouble, and then he could have gone for a more mid-game attack, and then Spirit again would have been in trouble. But Clem was actually just basically doing the same thing, just with a more defensive build, less greedy build, and so he fell behind, except in technology, which is what leads us to those TVTs that like Maru never loses, that goes on for 40 minutes even though he was behind. He just turtles up on 3 bases and uses technology and air superiority, and it works out totally fine, great, but makes that one mistake, and it kind of feels like a game that is very bad for Clem when he's starting. You know what I mean? Like, he needs a warm-up where he's like action-packed, microing every which way, getting into the groove of StarCraft 2, and then he's just like, he's on it. And that was a game that was about as slow as you can get, and I feel like Clem actually was almost like uncomfortable, even though he actually is so much better in those games than he used to be. But it was only because it was game 1 of the best of 5.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it also lends itself to equilibrium and just the size of it and how it pans out. Like, it's very hard to get in there and cause havoc. Like, even the main base is kind of huge, so even getting in this nice position where you can kind of take down a reactor or something like that, it's not necessarily the case. This map should be a lot more in Clem's playground, and we saw that he scouted early on, got to see what build he was against, and boom, he's going to start causing havoc in the main base and also the natural. I think Spirit is greeting this pretty respectfully, but still losing 5 SCVs for that army. Yeah. Actually, I think Spirit handled that about as good as you can.
Arguably, his main army could have been in the main a bit faster. I guess is like literally what could have been the difference there. And instead it did have to chase a little bit. But I was going to say, even if that wasn't as successful as it was, and it certainly was for Clem, if he just actually gets the juices flowing, basically, then I was already a fan of his opener, of course, depending that he can defend the counterattack, but usually you can, but he did do the damage, and now it is still a question of the counterattack, but 2 Cyclones versus 2 at this exact point. Thank you, Defender's Advantage. I don't think Spirit's going to be finding a whole lot. No fortunate lock-ons really for either player, I suppose, but there you go. Clem actually finally locked on to a Cyclone, loses the lock-on, but healthier Cyclones beat unhealthier Cyclones.
They absolutely do, and that Resources Loss tab was not in Clem's favor going up to that, because it was like 500 to 250. Now, very much in Clem's favor, so any kind of advantage either one of them felt, you can now definitely say that Clem absolutely feels good. He not only got to deal the economic damage, but he kept more of his army alive, and also, maybe most importantly, kept both his Cyclones alive against killing one. Very nice for him. Spirit definitely also bringing a different sort of TVT from his side of things. Actually going for Ravens this game, which he totally neglected in game 1.
Spirit's definitely mixing things up, not just in build order, but also in composition. But this time around, 100% starting off with a deficit that might just increase here as the auto-turret harassment is effective for Clem. Bit of a late pull, I suppose. 3 SCVs go down instead of maybe just the 2. And now Clem's up by 5 workers. 5.5, something like that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the production that they've both got going. Like, Clem feels far more comfortable, just kind of leaning into Vikings earlier on as well than Spirit did. Like, Spirit was very late in the Vikings, was more about getting the medevacs out and stuff. Granted, it kind of lined up with his build better, but Clem was very much about getting the starport on the reactor immediately to do that. So this could cause some trouble for Spirit with his Raven, and there's already a tank in position there for Clem. So Clem already feeling more comfortable in this game, I feel.
Interesting that Spirit's adding on a bunker. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is that, yeah, definitely looking at the way that they're following this up. Got the unsiege, and then all the second auto turret's going to find a lot more damage. Nope, actually just one more SCV. Clem went for a 3rd CC. Very typical in TVT. I'd say most of our games go to 3 CC. Maybe with someone losing limbs on the way, but they do. Spirit actually adding on that second barracks, right? So he did go into the Ravens, which one just got shot down actually successfully by Clem, but he did go into Ravens plural, but then actually was going faster into more of that Marine medevac focus than sometimes Raven openers can lead you to believe. And maybe Clem did not figure that out. I'm looking at his vision right now, and he didn't really see a whole lot. He didn't see the second barracks, for instance. But the 2 medevacs are flying on over, and while this hasn't been the best game so far for Spirit, and I don't think these are going to do a whole lot, there's definitely potential. And 2 unexpected medevac drops into the main base when you think your only point of defense has to be at your 3rd and natural.
I love how he's postured this as well, Zombigrub. Like, he's got that Raven in the bottom left, and I feel that's just been waiting there to cause a distraction for these 2 medevacs, or vice versa. It could be very cool. Clem did get a nice scan to see what was going on in that main base and did get to confirm, like, all right, you're getting your barracks up and running, but doesn't know necessarily if there's a 3rd on location or anything like that. It is going to be pretty wild pretty soon, but Spirit's being very patient about when he actually sets this up.
Yeah, Clem, I think he does seem to not have enough information. Otherwise, I expect his at least a missile start in the main base along with his Vikings moving over. But he does know about the lack of 3rd CC on location, just that Marine's barely scouting that. So I think you're right, though, because the scan was still in the northeast, let's say, the main base. There could still be a 3rd CC, like, right next to it. So he's found one Raven. Funny attempt with the interference matrix. But he doesn't know about the 2 medevacs. Yeah, he's still completely blind to it. 16 Marines unloading in the main base, even with Clem reacting quickly, could really stir things up as Spirit is also trying to attack at the front at the same time.
He was waiting for combat shields, it looks like, and it's done. His Marines are definitely quite a bit better. He's in a good location here as well. I mean, he is funneling through, and the air army of Clem comes back, but Spirit, he's not just doing one thing in one place. Look at this. I love the little medevac drop as well. Actually distracting the tank fire. Oh my goodness, Spirit. He's bringing the heat here.
Yeah, that was actually a really good addition. The Vikings will land, the SCVs were pulled, and the Ravens did come into effect, but 15 SCVs still going down for Clem. Now, Spirit still has some to make up for because his 3rd CC was so late. It's still not an orbital, but 15 SCVs was definitely a good start. If he can find anything else, which it looks like he will not be able to, I'd even start to favor him a little, but literally only the SCVs being killed was not enough. He needed to kill 20 plus, and then maybe still have a problem with the superior tank count of Clem. Spirit still in trouble, despite his attempt to do that 2-pronged attack. It was not good enough.
No, unit counting station. We've got like 5 tanks on the field, 2 for Spirit, 6 Vikings versus 0. And, you know, the Marine count's fairly equal. And Clem, quicker to start up his 2-2 as well. More SCVs. It went awry. If I didn't know who was playing as this Red Terror, this feels very much like Oliveira TVT. Like a little bit crazy. That second barracks being, oh my goodness, the Cyclones. That is so big.
Yeah, not that's, I mean, Spirit actually could have done something with that, bought a lot more time. We've seen Spirit in very scrappy TDTs before, but that was the opposite of buying time. That was just the green light for Clem to go on in and demolish Spirit in game number 2. It really felt like Spirit had timed that out well enough to find some superior damage, but the SCV lead from earlier and Clem taking really superior army fights really led to it being a one-sided affair. GG.
Really well played. Really well played. That was actually very well handled by Clem. The kind of sixth sense to just utilize your Vikings, just to check around your base. It's like, hey, something must be going on here, right? Like, you got 3 barracks now. I know that second barracks is earlier than mine, so that's kind of weird. It's already got like the tech lab and the reactor. So I think it was like a good call. The one thing that maybe could have even went better is having like 3 Vikings on either side, given he had so many. But, you know, alas, I'm a perfectionist. But yeah, nice game for Clem to just bounce back into, because it definitely feels like Spirit isn't playing the true textbook TVT against him, and is playing the a little bit weird, a little bit wild. But so far, he's 1 for 1 with it. So, you know, respect to Spirit for making Clem work for it. Because if that Raven did stay alive, who knows? That could have been a lot more chaos happening somewhere, and just might have caught Clem very, very off guard.
Right. Yeah, it could have turned into a bit of a 3-pronged, I suppose. Not that auto turrets are the biggest deal in the world, but something to distract a minor portion of the army, plus kill 5+ more SCVs. Could have done a little bit more snowballing, you know, opened up a little bit more of an opportunity, but didn't happen. And even though it was more of an opportunity than I was expecting, yeah, it still was very much not enough. So Clem able to strike back pretty quickly here, but I like your point. Spirit really is trying to mix things up. He's trying to add in, I think, a little bit more of that Terran mobility faster, even though he went 3cc first and foremost the first game, so fast is kind of a weird word for that. Kind of like contextually, right? From what we expect to be like kind of a slower 2cc into 3rd-cc Raven tank push stuff. He still expedited that Marine portion in the first game, and then definitely did it in the second game. So really trying to experiment with that, which 100% I agree with, is a very much Oliveira thing, back to when we used to call him time. I always felt like he was more of like a 2-base TDT, or even when it really had fallen out of fashion, and certainly more of a medevac boost, go, YOLO style of Terran as well. So Spirit's kind of trying to imbue, I guess, both sides of him, right? He's got a little bit of that macro Terran in the first game and a little bit of that go in the second game. Second game didn't work out, though, so let's see what he goes back to on Hecate. That's how you say it. You're
going with it.
It's literally
Hecate.
What you see, what you hear if you Google it. All right?
I don't trust Google, but no, Hecate sounds totally fine. Like, I thought it was Hecate at first, but, you know, I'll go with you, Zombie Grove. I'll go with you, you know. Alrighty. So, Hecate, to get things going here, tied up we are. Spawning over in the top right as our blue Terran, it is Clement.
As the red Terran, he is Spirits.
Pronunciation-wise, I will never, ever get over you and Kalaris duking it out in the green room.
Wait,
great words like urinal.
Oh, like classic American versus English way of saying things. Oh, I love those arguments.
It was so funny because like he went so Yorkshire on you, and like, you know, I felt like the true backbone of both of you just duking it out, like raw American against raw Brit, and it was absolutely wonderful.
Wait, how do you guys say it?
Urinal.
Yeah, it's right. I knew it was the weird I. Oh, it doesn't sound right. And you call it urine.
Urine, yeah.
So weird. You guys are so wrong. It's unbelievable.
You know, did you know that like you guys have, or we have a very different word for cilantro, coriander.
Yeah.
You know, we just have different words for things as well. Never mind spelling them different.
I did know that one actually.
Okay. That kind of blew my mind. I remember when I lived in America for a bit, and I was like, "What is cilantro? This sounds so strange." And I was like, "Oh, it's that weird tasting stuff like medicine." Okay. Oh, I kind of like it. Cool. It's coriander.
I only learned that paprika, the spice, was like literally just red pepper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, so, and by the way, I recently discovered paprika chips when I was in the Netherlands. And I was talking to Roddy's girlfriend, and she was like, yeah, it's kind of like a normal flavor. And I was like, I've never had these, and these are amazing. And I've looked everywhere in America since then. No one carries them. We're like getting like ketchup chips because like Canada's so close, blah, but ketchup chips are terrible, all right?
Yeah,
paprika chips are the way to go, guys. You gotta try them.
They don't even have like paprika Pringles or anything?
No, absolutely zero. Even like the fancy brand or like the really offsetting, like, you know, grocery brand. Like, no, none of them. Very disappointing.
Okay. You bring me back to a moment where Rotterdam and Mr. Bitter, this is how long ago this was. They had an argument about whose chip was better. So Kevin came in with the paprika chips, actually. And Mr. Bitter brought the American, like, cheese ball things. And it was just like, Mr. Bitter lost hands down because those things were not even remotely as good. But it was so funny how, like, strong he was, like, behind them in their corner. It was just so damn funny.
Really? Cheese potato chips was his...
that's what he brought.
His
like,
weapon? Oh, no, definitely not.
He could have brought something that, like, is kind of only in America, like, I'm actually so surprised there's no root beer anywhere else besides America. Because I'm like, hey, that's a damn good soda. But
it is a damn good soda.
Cheese balls or
no, the cheese ones are terrible. I used to live on the East Coast anyways, but Old Bay potato chips are also very good. So you should try those. So you should have brought those. But anyway, he's from the West Coast. We didn't know about him. We do have a TVT underway. It is a Hellion drop from Clem. Like 3.5 minutes in, we're at the important part. Hellion drop. Spirit, totally not in the know. Let's see how much damage it does.
I mean, this is really cool out of Clem. Like, this could be very, very feisty. Like, Spirit, to his credit, does have his army in a pretty good location, and the depot's in a good location too. So he's met this really nicely, and 2 Cyclones as well. But still, the damage,
wow,
hey, very mitigated by Spirit. Well handled.
This was one of the best Hellion drop defenses I've seen. They tend to go awry regardless of the best defenses ever being available. They just, something about Hellion drops, they tend to get that one lineup at the last moment. So 3 SCVs become 8, and then even though you lost literally everything 4, you kind of go, you know what, I'll work with that. But only 3 SCVs for the entire drop, and of course the limited time of your starport, which, to be fair, isn't really building so much, I guess. Well, actually, no, in this match, you're usually building Ravens, right? So yeah, you're no longer able to use your starport, can't use it even as an add-on factory. I mean, all in all, Spirit should be much happier with the start of this game than the last one.
Absolutely, and I mean, that hit about as fast as it could. Like, the starport was proxied, like, as close as it can be without, like, being scouted and stuff. So very, very well done by him, and he's going to be feeling as comfortable as he can do against a player like Clem, but we know Clem. Like, he hasn't been able to utilize that starport for anything else, which, knowing that you have a Raven lead, I would be, if I was in Clem's shoes, I'd be sweating right now about the potential of a push later on. Yeah,
the lack of Ravens and the lack, like, really, there's so much actually based off the knowledge that your opponent does not have their starport. The lack of Ravens, which gives you that automatic lead in the Ravens, so do with that as you will, or even, of course, the lack of medivacs. There's no way that Clem has gone into a faster, almost 2-on-1-like style, even, you know, if that's something he would do. And so you have a lot of safety, I feel like. No Vikings either, so these 2 Ravens going to carefree go across the map and do some auto turret harassment. Now, Clem might very well once again be in the totally defensive position, where he found himself in the first game, and he played it out well until he moved out. So, you know, just fix that part and he's fine.
Yeah, whenever I see, like, Raven plays like this, I know that I fall into the same boat where I'm like, oh, I've got these Ravens, I need to utilize them, right? Because if they get full-on energy, there's just wasted potential. But I feel that Spirit has been very, what's the word? Very evasive about using them in an actual battle. Like, even on Oceanborn, say that Raven stayed alive on the far left side and got used when he did that big drop with the single medevac and all the tanks came forward and stuff. Like, that could have maybe turned the tide. So I would love if he keeps those Ravens alive for an actual battle, because that is something that he will have over Clem this game, given how the starport situation turned out.
And definitely a good point. I could take out the tanks fairly, well, I mean, easily is a bit of a harsh word. Stim might be done, but there are no Vikings. So it really is just about avoiding the Marines gunning down your Ravens, and then those tanks, looking awfully alone too. Spirit's gonna have that 1-1 advantage with combat shields and potentially Ravens. I mean, that really sounds like a recipe for success in TVT, but Clem may be going to screw things up a little bit. Okay, miss rally on that tank. He has sent his Marines forward in a very dangerous gambling move, leaving his tanks at home, which might be able to protect the third base if everything's on the ground. But what if things go into the main? Only a single tank there. That's not going to be enough, especially if Spirit brings in the Ravens as well. It's a little more awkward than perhaps Spirit was hoping for, though. Very quick reaction from the reinforcements in the natural and the SCV pull, and that was handled wonderfully. And then at the same time, Clem just killed Spirit's third CC. Oh, this all went so terribly for Spirit.
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, that went absolute P-tong over here, and like this army is still alive and kicking, and you know, Clem, he's ran away with this, hasn't he? Like that timing that Spirit had with his 1-1 finishing and getting Stim online earlier, having combat shields online earlier as well. That hug of doom by those SCVs absolutely put a spanner in the works, and now even getting home. I don't think he's going to make it.
Cannot believe how right I was, you know, about 1-1 combat shields being done ahead of your opponent, and Ravens being available was so correct. That is such a good thing, okay? And it went so terribly. I never would have guessed how terribly that would have gone in 1,000 years. I mean, you know, not just the drop, but then also losing his third CC back at home, right? Like, it was the absolutely perfect response and actions from Clem. I mean, that's no, hello, that's not fair.
Yeah, in fact, like we could have been looking at a totally different outcome, like 100% different outcome, just based on all of that. But Clem finds himself with a massive supply lead. Spirit again, despite everything, despite 6 supply down and 2 bases, does have upgrades being ahead of his opponent, but I don't think it's going to matter much. Clem is not only here, he's in the main base. GG.
I watched it happen, and I understand why it happened. We've seen, I think, similar defenses in the main, like the additional couple of reinforcements, really, like literally not a lot, but even that, more than literally just the tank, was already pretty crucial and fortunate for Clem, sure, but obviously the immediate unsiege and the SCVs being pulled. I mean, to have cleaned that up as casually as he did was obviously a great thing for him. And it was doubly great, coincidentally, because he had set up that kind of almost gambling marine attack, which was not gamble at all, apparently. Marine attack that hit Spirit when he was not paying attention. It's like Clem invited the drop. He was like, more than happy, please give that drop to me, because I'm going to kill your third CC as well. Like, that type of succession of successes just... I mean, it feels like a bit of that magical kind of like that top 0.001% that we look for in our champions, you know?
I was just watching the feed now, and I was just going through it. It's like a unfortunate event unfolded after unfortunate event. Like, even to top it all off, where that tank was at the third base, and it's like, interference matrix, and then it gets the last shot off and kills the tank anyway. It's like, oh my goodness, this was just... Oh, everything went wrong that could. Like, unloading the Marines into the SCVs. I saw one medevac wasn't actually unloading either, and it was like, just everything that could go wrong went wrong. Super unfortunate for Spirit, because, yeah, he was not in the worst spot, especially when you remember, like, that starport opening with the 4 Hellions and the medevac. Absolutely flawed, dealt with very well by him. Just, man, TVT, it's so volatile in the sense that it can all go awry in the blink of an eye.
Expect it quite like that, but we do have now our potential last game here in this best of 5. We move on to Hard Lead, and in the bottom right, now up 2-1, he is Clem.
Oh, finding BML. What is it? Oh, 8. And spawning over in the top left-hand side as our Red Terran, it is Spirit. And we have seen that first map played out so differently to the rest of them, and I do feel just because if I did think of either one of these as a late game guy, I mean, Spirit is the late game guy, right? Like, he just loves the macro part. Doesn't mean Clem can't do it. It's just Spirit loves it. He plays late game before late game's begun, and he definitely did that with his build. But the other maps definitely lending a bit more towards Clem. but I guess I can't beat around the bush too much. Like, when going into the series, I did consider Clem the favorite. Probably, like, a 3-1, 3-0 scoreline. But I've been impressed by what Spirit has been showcasing. I think he's been cutting the right kind of corners against a guy like Clem.
Has definitely been working things out against Clem a little bit more recently. So in the last 3 times they played, a couple of games from Spirit, and then Spirit actually won one of the best of 3s. But overall, it does feel like Spirit has been chasing after Clem for an extended period of time. Not necessarily left in his dust, but just always chasing after him, the Vegeta to his Goku, truly. Because it otherwise does not look good for Spirit's score. There's always promise, and I think we always look forward to seeing if Spirit is truly like ascended to the next level, like he does kind of at Katowice actually these past couple of years. Seems to be when he's really ascended again. But then Clem's always like one step ahead of him. He gets Super Saiyan 2, Clem gets Super Saiyan 3, you know what I mean? And it feels like it's happening again, because Spirit looked like he figured something out in the first game, and then the rest of the games have actually ended in complete disaster. The games weren't like terrible from the start necessarily, but they ended in complete disaster.
Yeah, I feel that this series is going a bit, and it's a totally different matchup, but a little bit like when Lambo was ascending, and it was like, can Lambo beat Serral? And it was like, yeah, if he does all this sneaky stuff. Like, you see that Clem is scouting with his initial SCV, he's going for a safer build, so he kind of gets himself into the game maybe a little bit behind, and Spirit just blind again, like absolutely blind as a bat here. No scout. Like, if Clem did choose to proxy 2-Rex him, Spirit's dead. Like, 9 times out of 10 he dies, but he doesn't tend to do that. But again, Clem's just dotting his T's, or dotting his I's, crossing his T's and all that, and just getting himself into the game, just hoping it goes as normal as it possibly can. But yeah, cool dynamic that Spirit is bringing.
Trying, man. He's definitely trying to mix things up, and obviously have a bit more of a killer instinct as well. Like in that game 1, that was a beautiful display of that. Something that I think he also was weak for a couple of years ago. But up against Clem, when Clem really has become the number 1 Terran in Europe, and increasingly closer to number 1 Terran in the world, I guess. It's a tough matchup. I think Spirit going for the bunker on this map does make sense, obviously, because of his opener being so blind and greedy. We know that as well. But then also, this was the map in which Kira displayed more and more of the 4-6 Cyclone opener, which again was amazing in one game and then like kind of good in other ones. But Clem has also tried to bring out. Not really going to happen with that bunker. Kind of same with the Reaper shenanigans, I suppose, since you can leave most units in the main, but we have seen like Hellions, for instance, just dart on past. There's a couple of SCVs. But that's actually not what Clem is doing at all. No early aggression from Clem this time around. It's actually very much similar build orders, except Clem is going to take advantage of, I guess, a perceived macro game and just throw a 30C down location. Yeah.
I like that by him. Like, Spirit hasn't shown too much willingness of moving out early with like a 2-base push. He's been very much about trying to get the eco lead, hasn't he? So I think that's a pretty nice play by Clem, just to kind of say, like, oh, okay, you can play the greedy game, I can take shortcuts too. And I think it is something that will pay off for him, even though it's only minor. StarCraft 2 is a game of risks, and the risks you take, if you can evaluate this, probably gonna get away with it 9 times out of 10. You go with it. But both these players are I want to say bio only kind of guys. I haven't seen either of them go mech recently. So both kind of aware of what they most likely will be heading to. Just single Viking. Oh, okay, no, will be double Viking. Clem suffering a little bit of a supply block here momentarily. Uncharacteristic.
Yeah. Actually, kind of a harsh one. Fixes it though. 30C is going to finish all that gas, but a little bit of a mistake. But right, talking about game of inches, couple of SCVs favorable for Spirits, army supply favorable for Clem, production a little favorable for Spirit. He's ahead on that stem as well as the barracks and the engineering base actually, so pretty much in every regard. I saw Clem add on a Marauder in, was it game 2, I want to say? I think it was. And I was wondering if that was a mistake. I was going to comment on whether, Clem was just like kind of warming up or something. But then we're seeing it from Spirit too. And I feel like I have been seeing this more. This kind of like early but not super early game TVT Marauder that like helps out a little bit versus like a tank or something. Like it just seems either a more common mistake nowadays or actually purposeful from our Terrans.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, if I try to theory craft, I'm like, oh, is the 1 extra armor worth it early on? Especially if you get, like, the 1-1 timing, then the Marines are slightly worse. But then I'm like, but they all get wrecked by tanks anyway, and it just costs more. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I think it might... I want to think it comes out of just habit of having this setup with so many games against Protoss these days, especially,
Yeah.
you know, on ladders and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to... ask the players, but Spirit has been very good or very consistent about having his earlier second barracks up and done. So he means his stim is much faster, his combat shield's much faster, and also the engineering bays. Now, obviously, it does come at a cost because you do see that tank count is less for him. The Viking count is significantly less, but he does have 3 Ravens out versus 2. There is a big timing window for him with that that all lining up.
Very bursty composition, very much so. If you can find that one moment against your opponent's defenses, even if they look actually quite well defended, then that could be your winning moment. You get the concave, you have some durable Marines, and apparently a Marauder, and then the Ravens take out the tanks anyway. Like this absolutely can be a game-winning move in the blink of an eye. But then I would say theoretically, all things perfect, the higher tech, that tank Viking, so not higher tech actually, I guess because of 1 less Raven, but higher situational strength, I don't know. It does seem to come into effect better, right, as TVT goes on. It's the more solid way to play if you're really mindful of your unit positioning. So that's kind of what's coming down to. Spirit going to look for an attempted bust, and that might be in the main base, and Clem trying to deter it.
Yeah, this is... Okay, he sees it with a depot, and Spirit, upon seeing that, he's like, oh, I'll unload. But no, you're absolutely right, and I'm with you. Like, this can come a lot down to interference matrix usage. Like, if Clem buys enough time, or just, you know, gets those Ravens with his own matrix and keeps his tanks unmatrixed, then he wins. Hands down. But if he doesn't, and this kind of thing happens, then we could be looking at a very dicey situation. 1-1 done for him. No combat shield either for Clem. This is the timing that Spirit was looking for. The tanks rendered obsolete during this engagement, and Spirit, oh my goodness, what a timing it was.
Yeah. Might not quite be good enough. I mean, it's going to be good enough to stall out the 3rd CC from mining at least completely, 100%. But Clem looks like he is going to survive, and we know what that means for a TVT when we have 3 bases going on to 4. It could be a very long one indeed, but Spirit still has that upgrade advantage on the way once again. He's going to try and contain Clem on 3 bases while taking a fast report himself. In fact, he might just try and go for the killing blow right here, right now. Vikings landed, SCVs pulled into the meat slaughter, and Spirit absolutely will be taking game number 4. Clem not able to recover from this supply deficit, although he is going to try. There's a tap out. GG.
Wow. I mean, what a timing. Like, you saw how it was all lined up, and we spoke at it, we talked at it, we poked at the idea. Like, really comes down to those Ravens, whether they can get off those matrices or not, and they absolutely did. And, you know, that's just one moment. I would have loved to have seen what Clem was actually looking at when he sees it with his sensor tower. He's like, what are those 3 dots there? Like, what is happening? Like, and then it's like, because his Ravens, I don't know whether they definitely didn't get Matrix because he casted spells afterwards, but he wasn't looking at that. So I do wonder if Spirit distracted him elsewhere, because Clem's extremely fast. But yeah, caught with his pants down there, Zombie Grub, because once all your tanks are Matrix and you got that many Marines better upgraded than you, he did what he could. He launched the anti-armor missile, and it's like, well, have fun, I guess. Like, my army just got melted.
Yeah, and in a weird twist, sometimes, you know, we see those unsiege right before the interference matrix, and we go, brilliant. You know, he saves the tank because it can actually move backwards. In a weird twist, it actually would have been marginally better if Clem had actually kept all of his tanks sieged, because there was a tank shot, basically, available for when the interference matrices wore off. Not that that would have apparently stopped them, as Spirit did end up pretty much dominating that last fight, but just an interesting note there, because then if he also did have a couple of more reinforcements, if his SCVs were a little more effective too, they really went through a choke. Same with the Vikings. They might have gotten a bit more of a fan out in a concave. I don't know, you combine all three of those things together and perhaps are still in the game. But Spirit was absolutely looking for that opportunity, and he found it. Getting such freebie Raven usage like that, kind of one of those huge mistakes that you do expect to lose then in the professional games.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we replay that over again and those Matrix fly in and they get Matrixed, and it's like they back off. That 15 seconds that you need to then re-go. And then those upgrades are done for Clem where it's 1-1 and combat shield. Just so freaking huge, right? So freaking huge. That could not have lined up any better for Spirit. And I like that he's bringing this kind of funky, fiery style. And it was like the first game where I feel that he's actually brought the Ravens to the fight. And because the other games, it was like the Ravens for harass or not making them entirely. And this was the first time where it was like, whoa, you invested in not just 2, you got 3. You've saved them for this long. You haven't done anything with them so far, but it hasn't been a bad call. And then you got to see that, boom, they come in like that. Oh, you wonder why he hasn't been using them in the fights throughout the series. But I've got to also commend him on the fact that he's been switching up the builds a lot. Like he's not been trying to meet Clem on the battlefield with like equal keel. He's been absolutely bringing different strokes, which it's been the day of 5-game series, and honestly there's been a lot of good coming out from everybody, I feel, besides the first series. Don't watch that one.
Besides that one. Otherwise,
that one.
the day of best of 5 going to 5. Yeah, I've been awake since 3 in the morning actually, but if I had slept a normal amount, as Behemoth kindly allowed me to come in a little bit later, I would have really been able to sleep in, actually. These games have been going on for so long. These series have been going on for so long. And apparently it's not stopping. But even though we get ourselves to a tied series, here's where the true Clem bias comes out. Prepare yourself, chat. I do still kind of feel like Spirit is playing the more gambly style.
Oh, yeah.
Again, trying to go back to my super eloquently put way of describing how tanks and Vikings are super good. But it's Spirit trying to find those moments where he has the mobility plus the upgrades. Maybe with the Ravens, maybe not. But to overpower Clem when his armor is showing a weakness and he's just about to seal it up, you know? And it's great that it's worked out twice to get him to a Game 5 series, but then it also worked in it didn't work in surprising disasters in 2 other games. So, I mean, I'm not going to say coin flippy, you know, like 50-50, but it does feel very much dependent on that one moment. It's that one moment to decide each game and that one moment to potentially decide the entire best of 5 here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Like he's honed into how can he win? How can he he's really trying to make Clem pass these. When I say pass, he wants him to fail, obviously, but he's really throwing a real wrench at Clem. And it's like, if you don't beat this right here, right now, if you're not super well prepared for it, you're going to die. And it's not necessarily like super all in, even though I get you. But we are going to get right on into it. Spawning over in the bottom right-hand side here, Blue Terran, one final time today again, it is Clem.
The top left, looking to take down his nemesis. He is Spirits.
Now, you prefer calling coriander cilantro, yeah?
Yeah. I'd recognize it more.
How about aubergine or eggplant? Because when I first heard eggplant, I was so confused.
Yeah, so I took French in high school. No, seriously. Like, I would have never have known that aubergine was eggplant if I didn't take French in high school. So it took me a while getting into esports and talking to all you weird folk over there that is the word you guys all use. But I did know about eggplant and aubergine. I had to use the word eggplant far more often.
Well,
in fact, I've never used aubergine except in a French exam. There we go. Definitely eggplant.
I feel so. Clem is actually going for a 2-rack sim base this game, so absolutely divvying it up in the final game, which is cool. But there's a few words where I'm like, you know, like Gouda cheese. So ever since I heard roti on how you do say it, because it's Dutch, it's like Gouda or something, and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's how you actually say it. And I'm like, what? But I can't do that noise. Like, I just can't. Like, it's impossible. So, yeah, I'm staying with Gouda.
Yes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Well, like, he was very polite about, you know, not making me say the Hague correctly. Hag. Whatever it is. But yeah, there are absolutely sounds that I can't, my accent will not go that far, I suppose. But anyway, Gouda just sounds correct.
Yeah. Oh, so this game, Spirit actually did scout, but this game he sees like that it's a second depot before like anything goes on the low ground. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go for the high ground CC, and it was the right call against what he's gone up against here. And Clem, he's a beast when it comes to Reaper Micro. So far though, this didn't actually get any casualties on the side of Spirit, so nicely handled by him.
Clem still working with 3 Reapers. He still might have an opportunity. In fact, he goes for it. Oh, okay. Guess it was going to go on the right side. Went on the left. Wasted a grenade a little bit there. Some SCVs pulled to stop the mining, and Clem still with 3 Reapers, a 4 SCV lead, and thanks to his command center being on the low ground, will not really miss out on the command center timing, as he also takes a faster third.
Yeah, this is like positions entirely flipped, isn't it? Like, Clem has been very much about doing some early game aggression, be it with like the proxy starport and stuff, or in this final game here, very cool to see. But third CC much earlier, and Spirit, he is again gonna skip out on a Raven, go for a medevac. But this game, a far more normal situation for it. Like, best case scenario, he could get a lot of these Reapers, especially if Clem wasn't quite looking. One is chopped off. So that nice play by him.
Seeing a lot of medevac drops on the 2 bases, that is, in TVT for a while, and then kind of forgot. But now seeing it in Game 5, I'm like, oh yeah, like people are doing this all the time. But it has actually created some very funky scenarios that Clem, of course, has been a part of, playing as many TVTs as he does versus Spirit many times in the Open Cup. But in this case, he's going to be playing on the defensive. It's going to be Spirit able to try and utilize the Cyclone Micro. Clem's own Cyclone is prepared for such a maneuver, but we'll see if Spirit can find a bit of an opportunity. 2 Cyclones landed, kill the 1 Cyclone. I mean, maybe you can actually do something there afterward.
They are so much stronger against SCVs and just mineral lines in general, these new Cyclones. Like the fact that they can relock onto, but that is being greeted by quite the fierce army. And Clem did spot it, did get to move his army about a little bit. So getting confirmation that it is indeed a medevac. Does dart his Reapers across the field, and there isn't too much to greet them. I say that as I see all those Marines on the ramp there waiting for them, but might be able to... Oh, he got the Reaper for his troubles. Gets a few SCV kills. This is nice.
Yeah, I think at least 1. Spirit really needs to do something, though. I mean, his army is not actually all that fantastic. The Cyclones do wear off on, I guess, their strength fairly quickly. Whereas Clem, I mean, he's going into stim. He's actually the one now playing into more of that faster stim in the medevacs, right? Which you just saw picked up right there. He doesn't have Ravens, which is always going to be something that Spirit can use. But Clem has the much faster third CC, incredibly faster. 6 SCV lead and the army supply in which he has more of the threat of mobility. So Spirit's going to feel probably kind of, you know, tucked away in his own little base most of this game, because these drops are going to be constantly threatening him.
No. And
stim, well,
that is the most exposed stim of all time. And there's no tanks here either. I like the interference matrix on one of these medevacs. It's the one that Clem isn't able to scoot on out of there, but actually, all things considered, nice defense by Spirit there. I was starting to see a disastrous situation, like, oh no, the stim's been cancelled entirely and all that, but yeah, avoids a bad situation getting worse.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. It's still a bad situation, even though he loses 1 medevac, and Spirit could be like, okay, well, that's now half power. The point is, Clem still has the map control, and of course, with that, taking his third on location to really make sure he does, in fact, have a faster third. He's at a very consistent SCV lead, and obviously the upgrades are also coming through as well, and because it was such a Cyclone-based opener, usually I think at this time we'd be saying, well, Ravens and tanks. 2 Ravens and 3 tanks to no Ravens to 2 tanks or something there. But Spirit had 3 Cyclones, there's now 2 that, I don't know, just feel increasingly useless. so rare do they find an opportunity to lock onto something important as the Marines start forward to kill them. So yeah, I have my hesitations. If Spirit can get his third CC up and defended, then it's all fair game in TVT, but that is going to be very difficult to do.
Yeah, like if I'm in Clem's shoes, I'm almost feeling way too comfortable now. I'm like, what's actually going on? But he gets the scan, gets to see what is actually happening here, and he's like, you know what? Let's go into the main. Nice interference matrix just to stop that potentially happening, but every matrix he used just trying to stop the bleed doesn't help you win the game. And, you know, he's just... This is getting kind of out of control with how much of a lead Clem's actually getting in this game, because you see that sensor tower on the map. I think you've been in this position, Zombie Grub. You see it go up when you've not even got your stat, like your third down. You're like, oh my god, that spells trouble. You know, I'm so behind this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spirit is kind of the first game where he's really the one that has to play that perfect defensive mode, which, I mean, I think that is actually what we know him for, to be fair, for so many of years of his StarCraft career. But he's really going to have to play to his absolute best when it comes to the defensive games. Clem looking for a kill move into the main, but once again, Cyclone's interference matrix, well, this time too many medevacs perhaps. One medevac not unloading, another medevac killed, but it seems like it might just still be enough to actually, well, almost fully unload, in fact, as the matrix wears off. And there's a tank anchoring this drop as well. Spirit's definitely going to lose some SCVs, if not to straight up lose the game here.
Oh, I mean, beautiful. 1-1 just done. I mean, Spirit did it to him in Game 4. Clem's doing it in Game 5. Wonderful play. Darts back to this triangular third base as well. The SCV count climbs up, and one little tank doing a damn good job, it's got to be said, but oh my goodness. 69 workers, nice, compared to 45. Not a position any Terran wants to be in, especially against the likes of Clement.
Is not going to be able to break Spirit, I guess, right at this third base, but it is only a matter of time. Already working off of the 5 barracks and his 8 barracks. Now completing all of the reactors as well. Fourth base is a planetary, so less fear of potential weird base trade, which Spirit absolutely cannot threaten. Clem just has to pick his moment to strike with the full might of his army, which will be maybe 40 army supply ahead. Upgrades are a long way away. He doesn't really have to wait for those, but as long as he's maxed out, I would say gun it, right?
Absolutely. Clem with a good 50 supply lead here. He's also up to 8 barracks, all with reactors as well at this point. So he's beyonding it now. He absolutely is. I don't know how many factories he's got. 2 factories as well, getting all the upgrades on the go. And how many more times can Spirit actually stop like a Doom drop into the main? I mean, he's not actually going to go for it. He's going to go for this. This might be a bit of a precarious fight for the young Frenchman.
Tanks that if they are siege defending a choke, it's still pretty hard to break, but Clem can definitely go Zap Brannigan style. Just throw waves and waves of his own men into the kill bots. It'll eventually will work out, as Clem also takes a 5th base on location, knowing how much he is in the lead. Even if Spirit were to able to sacrifice 16 Marines and 2 medevacs away from the front lines, it's questionable on whether or not they do enough damage to make up for this entire game anyway. I do like this though, kind of interfering with reinforcements, almost like a Zerg versus a Terran. Doesn't really work out as well as he was hoping though.
No, and I mean, Clem isn't all in with this. His supply hasn't really dropped from like the 180, 190 mark, and I'm looking at that blue growth on the minimap. 4th base secured, 5th base going up as well. SV count still a 20 lead, and this, he's getting ready to go to the main Zombie Grub, and it's still, every time I see his units die, his supply climbs up. He's 200 now. I don't think Spirit can stop this.
Fortunately not able to bring enough of his own army to that top side, and Spirit will tap out. Clem will get the 3-2